Direct democracy in the European Union. Referenda. The term referendum refers to a key tool in direct democracy, a direct vote by the voters on a specific proposal, constitutional amendment, or important policy issue. The member states of the European Union have different traditions regarding the use of referenda. Some countries frequently use referenda, while others are more hesitant due to historical or political reasons. Trying to identify different types of citizen referenda, we can list them into citizens-initiated referendum, a mechanism whereby a certain number of citizens can request a referendum on a specific legislative proposal. Abrogative, rejective citizens-initiated referendum, a mechanism whereby a number of citizens can request the repeal of an existing law or part of it, or can reject the entry into force of a law that is in the process of being adopted. Citizens' initiative referendum for the amendment of the Constitution, a mechanism whereby a certain number of citizens can submit a proposal for a constitutional reform for its consideration through the required procedure, or request holding a referendum on the matter. Is there a referendum regulation at the European Union level? Well, the EU treaties do not currently provide a legal framework for holding EU-wide referenda. Any such mechanism would require significant treaty change and consensus among member states. Instead, referendums on European matters are generally organized and conducted according to the national laws and constitutions of each member state. For example, since change to EU treaties requires ratification by member states, some countries may hold referendums to ratify such changes. Furthermore, referendums on EU membership or withdrawal, like the 2016 Brexit referendum, are subject to national decision-making. Anyway, the idea of having an EU referendum has already been raised by several intellectuals and public figures, as the institutionalization of an EU referendum is considered a valid option in order to increase democratic legitimacy in the EU by securing the political commitment on the citizens. The discourse is not always echoed by political elites, who often fear that allowing European citizens to decide directly on integration matters could potentially hinder the progress of European integration. Some perspectives. In the report of the final outcome of the recently held conference on the future of Europe, European citizens called for conceiving an EU-wide referendum to be triggered by the European Parliament in exceptional cases on matters particularly important to all European citizens. It is clear that this proposal is vague and fails to specify this aspect in a detailed manner, leaving several crucial aspects undefined, such as whether a voter quorum will be required, whether there will be additional mechanisms to request a referendum beyond the parliamentary request, and whether the referendum will be consultative, binding, abrogative, proactive, or confirmatory. These decisions are critical as they will fundamentally shape the nature and function of the new referendum institution. The European Citizens' Initiative. Direct democracy in the European Union involves mechanisms that allow European citizens to directly participate in decision-making processes, supplementing representative democracy. Direct democracy in the EU is work in progress, reflecting the Union's commitment to enhancing citizen participation while navigating the inherent complexities of its diverse and multi-level structure. The main current tool of semi-direct democracy in the EU is the European Citizens' Initiative, ECI, provided in Article 11 of the Treaty on the European Union. The detailed rules of which are set out in a European regulation that allows EU citizens to directly participate in the EU legislative process by proposing new provisions or changes to existing legislation. Do you know how it works? Explaining briefly, an European Citizens Initiative can be launched by a group of at least 7 EU citizens who are residents of at least 7 different member states. The Citizens Committee, acting as the organizing committee, which must register the initiative with the Commission, which oversees the ECI process. The organizers of the ECI must draft a detailed proposal outlining the objectives, scope, and rationale of the initiative. The proposal must fall within the EU's competencies and respect the principles of the European Union treaties. Once the European Citizen Initiative proposal is approved for registration, organizers have 1 year to collect a minimum number of signatures from EU citizens supporting the initiative. At least 1 million signatures must be collected from at least 7 different EU member states. While the European Commission is responsible for reviewing and considering ECIs, the European Parliament monitors the Commission's actions and decisions regarding submitting initiatives, holds debates, and adopts resolutions related to ECIs and the topics they address. Criticisms and calls for innovations. Improving awareness and participation. Making direct democracy a reality and using the full potential of the European Citizen Initiative depends therefore on citizens' willingness, interest, and active involvement on a voluntary basis. People's lack of knowledge about the existence of this initiative is one of the main issues that prevented its success. A major problem ECIs face is the low public awareness of the ECI. The organizers are tasked with the dual task of communicating the initiative topic, while simultaneously communicating the ECI instrument to gain trust of signatories to provide their personal data. The success of certain initiatives might be attributed to their emotional appeal. Several initiatives, such as Fur Free Europe, Stop Finning, and Save Bees and Farmers, which focus on animal welfare and biodiversity, have been particularly successful. By eliciting a strong emotional response, they are more likely to succeed than those addressing constitutional, procedural, or electoral matters. Simplification. Suggestions for simplifying the process, such as lowering signature requirements from 1 million to a more achievable number, and streamlining administrative procedures. For example, establishing a centralized support service to assist organizers with technical, legal, and administrative aspects, reducing the burden on individual organizers, and to increase the accessibility to the European Citizen Initiative. Furthermore, the minimum number of member states required to collect signatures could be reduced, making it easier to gather sufficient support across diverse countries. Enhancing impact. A key aspect is that the European Commission is not required by law to propose legislation based on an European Citizen Initiative, since the Commission must consider the initiative and respond within 6 months of submission and provide a formal response outlining its reasons for either acting or not acting on the initiative. Proposals for making the Commission's response more binding, or at least ensuring a more committed follow-up, have been discussed to enhance the effectiveness of the ECI. For example, define clear and defining follow-up procedures for successful initiatives, ensuring that the European Commission is obliged to act upon them in a more transparent and accountable manner, or ensure that initiatives that reach the required results are automatically discussed in the European Parliament, enhancing their visibility and change of legislative follow-up.